My name is Gavin Evans, and this is my review for The Boys Season 2, and this will be a spoiler-filled review, so if you haven't seen it, go and watch it, then come back and watch my review because I will be going in depth. Now, the first time I watched this season, I was a bit disappointed. I still enjoyed it overall, but I had a lot more issues with it, so this time while watching it, I went in with low expectations, and I have to say, this season was even worse than I remember. I don't think it's a good season of television. But let's begin talking about what I did like about it. First with Jack Quaid, who is once again great here. I love how they doubled down on him being the humanity of this group and how we legitimately see him struggle with what to do. And I also love how he's referred to as Butcher's Canary. I really like that aspect. I think Erin Moriarty, Karl Urban, and Anthony Starr all gave great performances this season. I'll talk about their characters later. I think Giancarlo Esposito is a fantastic addition to the show. In fact, he's kind of underutilized in this season, but he just brings so much confidence to this character. The way he stands face to face with Homelander and doesn't even flinch, he just absolutely nails this performance. I think Laz Alonso has a bit more to do here, and I still really like him. Toma Capone, he still gives a good performance, and this series is still really funny in moments. Like, the second season begins with Translucent's funeral, and they show a bunch of pictures of him, but because he's invisible, there's just these floating clothes, and that cracked me up. And there is tension here, especially with Starlight at Vought. You know things aren't going too good for her. You feel like she's just this far away from getting killed. So there's tension in that storyline. And the soundtrack is even better this season. I love how there's a lot more Billy Joel music and how that actually has to do with the character of Huey. And the use of pressure in the first episode is just masterful. Like, it just builds up and ramps up the season right from the get-go so incredibly well. I love the use of that song. And there are some really sweet moments between Huey and Starlight. I do like these two characters together. I've got some other complaints regarding them, but I'll get to that in just a bit. And the first few episodes are legitimately entertaining. Not great, but entertaining. And there's one episode, episode 6, I believe, and it's everything that the movie New Mutants should have been. So there are good aspects to this season, but I think around episode 4, it becomes clear that this isn't going to be as good. And here's the reason why. Because from the beginning of this season, there's clearly been tension between Huey and Starlight, and understandably so. I mean, Huey did lie to her in a big way, and that's doomed to have consequences. So in the first few episodes, they're trying to make up, and in episode 4, they spend the entire time together, and it's a really sweet episode, and you're like, oh, okay, this is nice, they're back together. But then for the sake of subverting expectations, they take all those sweet moments in episode 4 and just throw them away, and now we're back where we started from at the beginning of this season. It's just like, you progressed the relationship so good in this episode and you wasted it. And then in the same episode, you've got Becca reuniting with Butcher, and it's really nice, but then they just throw it away for the sake of subverting expectations. And then Becca tells him that she went to Vought instead of Butcher because she knew Butcher would get mad at Homelander for raping her. And she talks like that's a bad thing, that he would be angry about that. So my interest in this plot and Becca as a character just dropped permanently after that. And then the show only gets worse from there. Like, the big addition of this season is a character of Stormfront, who is played by Aya Cash. And I think this is a very hot take, but I hate this character. Now, Aya Cash, she was in another movie called Scare Me, and I thought she was terrible in that movie. And she's better here, but I still think she's a really bad actress. And I don't say that to be mean. She might be the nicest person ever, but as an actress, she's just not good. I kind of liked where they were taking the character at first because she's so different from everyone else at the start. So maybe you're like, okay, maybe she's just like Starlight. Maybe she can see past the corporate bullshit and she can be someone you can root for. And then at the end of episode 3, you're like, oh no, she is like evil, evil, evil. Like, she is on the same level of Homelander. And I think that is a great idea of how they tried to mislead the audience, but it would have more impact if she came across like Starlight in the first few episodes. How she's nice, she's polite to everyone, but she can see past the corporate bullshit. And then at the end of episode 3, she kills all those people in horrific ways. And then it would feel like a bigger 180. But I like the idea there. But I just hate this character. I think she feels so cartoonish. She kind of just feels like a kid who just discovered all these raunchy words and swearing for the first time. So now she just overdoes it to a point where it just feels like the character is so immature. Like she's trying so hard to be dark and edgy. Like remember that Titans trailer where Robin's like, fuck Batman? That's what this character feels like. And then it's revealed that she's a Nazi. And I just feel like that whole idea serves zero purpose. Like she's the reverse Captain America. She's a Nazi in present day. And they just do nothing with it. And then I also hate how they use her to make every character look like an idiot. Like she turns Starlight into a bumbling idiot. Like anytime we see Starlight in season 1, we can see that she's struggling but trying her best to be as strong and confident as possible. And where's that Starlight here? Because anytime she encounters Stormfront, she's just like, oh, I was doing this. And it's just, she came across like a really weak character. And then Stormfront also ruins Homelander. Like Homelander was terrifying in the first season. And in this season, they treat him like the butt of every joke. Like at the end of season 1, he kills Elizabeth Shue's character. The only person he cares for. So he should have become a scarier version of himself in season 1. He should have become meaner and scarier. And we just don't get that Homelander here. There's one scene where you're like, oh my goodness, did he just kill all those people? And then it turns out he didn't actually. And I hate that fake out. Instead, what we get is that Homelander is mad that he's getting memed. So then he goes up to Stormfront and pretty much asks her how to meme. Like we go from the guy who instead of rescuing a plane filled of people and leaves them all for dead, to a guy who looks at a bunch of memes and gets mad. Like what an embarrassing downgrade this season. And I just hate it when shows in general talk about trending and hashtags and memes. I just find it to be all so cringy. Like I get that's how modern day works, but I find modern day to be very cringy, so I don't like to see it in my show. So just how they handle Homelander and Starlight I wasn't a fan of, and I didn't like Stormfront at all. But I also wasn't a fan of how they treated Butcher. I just felt like this character was handled in a very uneven way. Like, he's way too mean in moments, he's way too sweet in moments, and he's way too sad in moments. And like in the first season, he was a character that hid all of his emotions. But now he wears his emotions on his sleeve, and it just doesn't feel consistent with what we've seen from him. And then we find out that he only really cares for Huey because apparently Huey looks like his little brother. Like, what a way to ruin that relationship and the work that was put into it. Like, they set up these two characters incredibly well and set the relationship and progressed it incredibly well. And then we find out, oh, it's because Huey looks like his brother. It doesn't add anything. In fact, it kind of takes away from it. And then in the last episode, well, he plans to give the boy away to Vought and to just stay with Becca. It's too much. You go from, is he good guy? Is he a bad guy? And now you just turn him into an unlikable asshole. And then they try to go back on that, but then it's too late. You already had him do that. And it just, I'm sorry, the fact that he was just talking about that when he saw his wife was in pain, and I just didn't buy that at all. It was far too mean, far too nasty, and far too evil, even for Butcher. I don't buy it. And it just feels like they didn't know what to do with him this season. Like, it begins with this plot regarding Becca, but then everything after that feels like he added nothing to this show. Like, in the last few episodes while other people are running around, he's talking to his mom and dad about all this stuff, and it just feels like they didn't know what to do. Like, Huey was rescuing Starlight at that point. Considering that their relationship has been a big part of this season, why not have Butcher be the guy to go with Huey? I don't get why they did that, because everything that happened with Lamplighter would have happened the exact same way. What I honestly think they should have done is that he should have found Becca, but Becca knows that they're watching her and she can't just leave. So then he stays behind the gates and he's trying to come up with a plan to get them out of there for the entire season. That would be a better way to handle his character, but they didn't do that. And then we've got Chase Crawford playing the Deep, and I guess he gives a fine performance, but the Deep has nothing to do this season. I get what they're going for with his character and what they're trying to say, just added nothing. And then we've got Jesse T. Usher, who at first provided some much needed tension for Starlight. You know, he knows what she's done, and there's a bit of back and forth, and you feel like that he could legitimately get her killed. But after that, they just did nothing with his character, and by the end, we're back where we were at the start of this season with him. So I didn't care for that. Then you've got Dominic McElligott, who I think added nothing to this season. I kind of like what they did with her and her relationship, but I just think she's a very flat character. She doesn't have much personality. In the first season, I praised Kobe Menifee because I said that she plays the unlikable bitch very well, but she works best in a smaller role, and she's given way too much to do here, and she can't do it, and I didn't like anything regarding her character here. Then you've got Frenchie and Kamiko, who have nothing to do this season that really matters. I don't care about the backstory between Frenchie and Lamplighter. When they did those flashbacks, I'm like, I don't care. Lamplighter was written terribly, and his suicide didn't make any sense because he seemed key on trying to redeem himself before he dies. And I guess he kind of did that, but he wanted to do it in a bigger way. And then I'm just going to be listing random negatives from this point forward. Like, Huey brings up Robin at one point, and I'm just like, you can't do that anymore. Like, her death had zero weight after the first episode of the first season. Like, he moved on incredibly fast, and then he tries to bring her up again here. No, doesn't work. And then in episode 3, Huey and the boys are apparently at the breaking point, so they say, but I don't really see why. Like, I never felt that. Like, what happened recently that would really do that? And then in that same episode, there's a helicopter that finds them, and it's really contrived. And then the super terrorist takes them down. And it just felt like a really contrived way to push the plot forward. And then we get this one episode where it builds up to this fight between Huey and Mother's Milk and Butcher against Black Noir. And they build up to it this entire episode, and when the fight actually happens, it is so underwhelming. And the way it ends is that Butcher blackmails Noir that if you do this, I'll show these pictures. And that brings me to a whole other complaint, which is stop it with the blackmailing. I swear, if there's one moment in season 3 where someone gets blackmailed because of a video shown to them on their phone, I'm going to snap. It feels like it happens way too many times this season. It ends off with it too, with Queen Mauve doing it to Homelander. I'm sick of it. It's so lazy. And it's such a contrived way to keep the main characters alive, to the point where it just feels like they can't die. This is what we call plot armor, where the only reason the characters don't die is because they don't want to kill them off, so they come up with some contrived nonsense. And speaking of which, there was this one super who apparently has the power to blow up anybody's head. And once you introduce a power like that, you just cross a line that you can't uncross, and there's just no reason for the good guys to still be alive. When you have someone who could kill them all like that, and she doesn't, it's going to feel contrived. So based on that, it feels like they have plot armor in that regard too. And then we get like a big reveal of who it is in the last episode, and both times I've watched this season, I've been like, who? It's like in Guardians of the Galaxy, I'm Star-Lord. Who? Who is this? Why do I care? I don't. And then there's this big plot of Compound V getting revealed to the public, but I feel like they do nothing with it. It gets out there, and then it just, nothing really happens as a result. There's no real progression in plot. Some other plot points this season is this whole plot between Becca and her kid, and I never really cared for this. It just doesn't work for me. I don't have an in-depth reason why. It just, I watch it and I'd rather they focus on other things. I didn't find it entertaining. I didn't find it interesting. I didn't find it intense. It just bored me. And there's even a few episodes in the middle of this season where it feels like that plot and those characters get forgotten completely until they come back in the last two episodes. And then you've also got this plot of the super terrorist, which just doesn't get explored nearly enough, especially for what they try to do with it at the beginning of one episode. And then we get Starlight being an enemy of Vought, and when she gets kidnapped, it just has no weight to it. In that episode, there was just too many things going on that it didn't really sink in that she was kidnapped, and it kind of turns Vought into an evil corporation to evil villains. You know, like Dr. Draken from Kim Possible, something that they have this room to hold the superheroes prisoner. I just don't really buy that. And then there's also some consistency things, like Hughie, Butcher, and Starlight are wanted and nobody recognizes them at the hospital, but that's a bit nitpicky. But you know what isn't nitpicky? There is one scene, I think in episode 6, where Hughie's in a van and the van gets pushed over and Hughie gets wounded really badly. He's bleeding, they make it out like he could possibly die here. And then the very last episode, Becca, Ryan, and Mother's Milk are in a car. Stormfront takes that vehicle and throws it up in the air and lands and rolls over a bunch of times and everybody's fine. So Hughie, in a van, tips over. Oh my goodness, I might die. All those people in the car, flips over. You gotta have consistent rules for a show. And then there's this one scene where Stormfront's with Homelander and she asks him to laser her breasts. And he does so and she gets turned on by it. Because his lasers don't hurt her, it feels good to her, but then in the last episode, she gets killed by the kid's laser beams. So does it feel good or does it kill her and blow her to bits? Which one is it? Because you can't have it both ways. And also the last episode has a severe case of Return of the King. Well, it goes on for far too long. There's too many endings. Didn't like the ending at all. And the last thing I'll bring up is the fact that this season is a lot more political and none of that stuff works for me. When you've got Stormfront, an actual Nazi, calling people snowflakes and SJWs, and she says make America safe again, it is very clear what the people behind this show are trying to do, and it's just disingenuous. It's bogus. And it takes me out of it because it's not even remotely subtle. If you just rewatch some of that stuff, you can still have the same context that you're trying to put in the show there without being so in your face about it, and it would have been all the better for it. But there's many other reasons why this season doesn't work. It is just a complete mess. There's far too much going on. Most of the plots don't really work for me in any way. I didn't like the addition of Stormfront, and I think so many of my favorite characters just act in a way that doesn't feel consistent with the characters we know in season 1, especially Homelander, Starlight, and Butcher. There were still some good things here. There are good performances, and it is an entertaining season of television, but it's nowhere near the level of that first season. So I'm going to go ahead and give The Boys Season 2 a 4 out of 10. Okay, have you seen The Boys Season 2? What did you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. Make sure you like, make sure you comment, make sure you subscribe. Stay tuned for some more videos soon, and Gavin